Go for it.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. So I'm Kate Williams, writer and historian, written a book about the youth of Queen Victoria, and I'm thrilled to see you all here this evening at this marvellous occasion to celebrate Victoria, the wonderful drama that's going to be such a big hit, I'm sure. And I'm here to speak to the most brilliant people, and I have to speak to you this evening, Jenna Coleman, who is the star who plays Victoria, Tom Hughes, who plays Albert, and Rufus Sewell, who plays Lord Melbourne, Daisy Goodwin, the writer, and Damien Tiller, the executive producer. So please welcome them all to the stage. Oh, splendid, and our connector worked. That's just marvellous. Splendid. Hello, Rufus. Marvellous to see you. So I'm so happy that worked. And I've got what I'm going to do is ask a few questions of the panel and then throw it open to you so we can all have a conversation. So I'm going to start first. So I'm going to start with Daisy and say to Daisy, so Daisy, why did you decide to write a drama devoted to the early years of Victoria's reign?
Well, it all started when I was a student. I was about 19 and I was sitting in the university library and I was looking through the diaries of Queen Victoria because I had to write an essay about media and the monarchy. And I was thinking, oh, Queen Victoria, old bag and a bonnet. And I suddenly saw this line of text that said, I've just seen my darling Albert in white cashmere breeches with nothing on underneath. And I just thought, oh, yes, this is a girl of passion. This is a passionate teenager. And she just sort of leapt off the page at me. And I suppose I've had a bit of a thing for Victoria ever since. And quite recently, I was writing a novel about Victoria, and I thought, actually, this would make the most wonderful screenplay. And so I met Damien, and I said, Damien, what do you think? And I told him how I saw Victoria, because I have a 15-year-old daughter who's about the same size as Jenna, and we were having a row the other day, and I thought, what would it be like if you suddenly woke up tomorrow morning and found yourself the most powerful woman in the world? That would be quite scary. So I just had this notion of this, tempestuous teenager suddenly becoming queen, who really doesn't get on with her mother. And from then on, the scenes just sprang from the page, and I just thought, well, this is the Victoria that people don't know. They don't know about her relationship with Melbourne. They don't know about how she falls in love with Albert. They certainly don't know about the scandals that beset the beginning of her monarchy and how difficult it was for her to become queen. And finally, I'll just say the thing that I really love about Victoria is that she's the first queen to choose her own name. Nobody was called Victoria in the 19th century before Victoria. And she decides she's not going to be called Alexandrina, she's not going to be called Charlotte or Elizabeth or any of these kind of regal names. She's going to be called Victoria. And because Victoria is the name of a winner. And, that's how she made her mark on the 19th century.
Fascinating, yeah. So, well, a winner. And Jenna, you are absolutely wonderful in the role, luminous and fantastic. And what's it been like for you portraying such an incredible role?
It's been quite a revelation, actually. From beginning to end, I think she's quite surprising, and I'm surprised in how little I knew when I first started, and actually a lot of people who I speak to, and while we've been filming and saying I've taken on this part, and a lot of people instinctively would say, you can't play Victoria, she's stern and old and wore black for the rest of her life. And actually, I don't think people are quite aware of how vivid she is and kind of what a lust for life she has. And I think considering the way in which she was brought up and the role in which she was born to do and to step into, but yet none of that has really seemed to squash any of that spirit in her, and I find that fascinating. And I think as we see her go from teenager to queen, youth, power, kind of balancing this relationship and this dynamic, it's fascinating. And to play her has been, she really grows and grows and grows through the series into this formidable woman with a vein of steel, yet never loses her humour or lack of kind of almost like self-consciousness in a way, I think.
Well, yes, and I love it when Lord Melbourne says to her that you have an innate dignity that can't be taught, because I think that's what you show so brilliantly, her royal dignity and the carriage. It's
Thank
superb.
you. There's
Really
definitely
wonderful.
moments where we see her more undignified as we
Those
go
are
along,
fun.
but that's the wonderful thing about her is that she's so flawed
Yeah.
and human, I think, and you get to see that.
You get to see it. Wonderful, thank you. Now I'm going to speak to Lord Melbourne, miles away on the other side of the Atlantic. And Rufus, so what did you discover about Lord Melbourne once you began researching for the role?
Well, I didn't know anything about him. When Daisy first sent me the script, I thought it was wonderful. I liked him and her together so much. And I was a little suspicious of the whole thing of being kind of souped up. That in some ways it had been, it wasn't really that way. He wasn't, that it seemed so dramatic and so interesting relationship. And he seemed such an interesting guy that I thought if he really existed, if he'd been like that, and their relationship had been like that, we'd already know about it. But I did my research, and it's all true. And just like Jenna said, when you think of Victoria, you think of this older dower dressed in black, but she was very vivacious and very bright, very, and their relationship was fantastic. For me, it was very nice, and it made a change, actually, to read a character and like himself, and want to play him. He was very dignified. He had a bit of a sad past. He was a great fan of very, very intelligent, empowered, brilliant women. I think that's something to do with his mother. He gravitated towards strong, brilliant women and was very supportive. I like that.
Well, you obviously, you give a brilliant representation of this great political man who's been through so much, and that's what I loved, is seeing the contrast in the innocence of Victoria and the sort of world-weary knowledge of Lord Melbourne and everything, and so this amazing relationship they create, which was so brilliantly done. And Tom, I'm excited to ask you, so Albert, we've got marvellous show of the Great Exhibition inside Kensington Palace, so he's seen as one of the most clever and insightful men, and some say he's the greatest king England never had. And what did you learn about Albert, this most fascinating man, when you were working on the role?
I think what Jenna said about our awareness of Victoria, maybe it's a generational thing. For me, Victoria was a woman. As a woman, I only really knew her post Albert's death. And you're aware of the influence, but to really delve into that youthful side of them both, and discover that this passion, this vitality. But what I was excited about predominantly is delving into him as a human being, his psychology, the strength of character that it would take at 19 to be moved from a relatively remote part of Germany to be in a foreign country with all the pressure that was on him. That's a very unique, a very extreme position for a human being to be in. And as an actor, I'm always drawn to the complexities of human beings, and it's always that kind of grey area within us that excites me, bringing that to life. And I felt with Daisy's writing, what was so magical about it is these were fully formed people. And it's the human side of these characters that really grabbed me in. It was fascinating to delve into him as a man, find out what made him tick.
So it's a real love story between Alice and Victoria.
Yeah, it's a huge love story.
Absolutely.
It's a love story, but also it's a love story within a domestic kind of transaction, as it were. You've got the business side of their relationship as well as the inner workings of their own passionate relationship, and that in terms of storytelling is what is so interesting, because they have to negotiate with each other, literally what salary Albert is going to get paid, and whilst writing love letters, and I think constantly throughout their relationship navigating their passion and their love, and being in the bedroom and then being in the throne room, and kind of having both of these sides of the relationship makes kind of really interesting dynamics and really interesting storytelling.
Fascinating. And Rufus, would you say it's a love story between the Queen and Lord Melbourne?
Well, it's what was wonderful to play was that it's all sorted. There were certainly rumours about that. That she was known as Mrs. Melbourne much in the same way as she was known as Mrs. Brown later on. But there was a lot of gossip. The relationship was very emotional. There were all sorts of different feelings mixed up. She was 18, he was much older. I think there were a confusion of all sorts of feelings between them. But above all, I think he was so intent on stewarding her through a very vulnerable time in her life. I mean, his desire to do well by her, his responsibility towards her, probably outweighed any other confusing feelings he had.
Fascinating. And Damien, I'll turn to you now. So you, the exec producer, big job, huge series. And how difficult was it to cast someone like Queen Victoria that we all think we know?
It was the easiest thing in the whole. The thing was persuading Jenna that she should be Victoria, because of course it had to be Jenna, there was nobody else to be, because Victoria, this diminutive, hugely charismatic, from her diaries, she was an extremely prolific diary writer. The voice that, Jenna's voice is Victoria, the voice that Daisy has given her also comes from Victoria's writing. She was this very, very vibrant, capricious, mercurial, charismatic character, and there is only Jenna, I think, who has the stark quality and, I'm allowed to say, the diminutive power to be this diminutive queen, and it was very easy.
Oh, superb. Well, thank you so much to the panel for these brilliant answers, and obviously everyone, it's been such a passion project for everyone in the cast and for Damien and Daisy as well. And so now I'm going to throw it open to you, ladies and gentlemen. So we have mics coming round. So if you would like to ask a question, just put your hand up, and these two ladies with a mic are just for here. So they're going to come to you when ladies with the mic are going to come to you, and then I'll get to come forward. Yes, madam.
Hi, my question is for Jenna. Obviously, the episode started there by saying the monarchy was in crisis, and at that point, that's when the teenage Queen Victoria comes along. So I want to know, how do you see her youthfulness as being both a strength and a weakness in terms of what she brought to the throne?
I think her strength in her youth is actually her purity, because of her uncles and because of the way the monarchy was at the time. What it meant was she came to the throne with a real goodwill, and that's actually what she wrote. She says, I may be young, I may be inexperienced, but I feel there is no one more fit and right to rule. So I suppose in youth there's a kind of an optimism without fear sometimes, which comes from that. But with that, it often means she leapt into impulsive mistakes, such as the bedchamber and different crises, because she was impulsive. And also one very interesting thing, which I think actually it was Lord Melbourne, who can't see us, but we can see him. I'm just pointing that out. It's very weird. But what is really interesting is he said, once the Queen's mind is made up, there is no unearthly power to make her go round. She will only go forwards. She will not go round. And I think that in Victoria is equally a flaw, but equally what makes her great.
And I think youth, let's face it, when our monarch dies, Prince Charles will be king, but actually, it's always good for a monarchy to have an injection of youthful new talent, isn't it? New blood. So, if you were to skip a generation, that gives it a bit of a lift, and I think that was definitely what was happening in 1837, because they'd had a lot of old men, and suddenly to have a lovely young girl was made the monarchy sexy again.
And purity, as you say, these men had been very debauched, and Victoria was, as you say, perfect purity. Yes, I think our most popular monarchs in history have always been the younger ones.
Yes.
We like them young, coming to the throne, like Henry VIII and Elizabeth II. Splendid. Any further questions with the mics coming round?
Another question for Jenna. I don't know how much period drama you've done before, but how did you go on with the costumes? Do you have a favourite costume or dress? And also, we keep hearing about how diminutive Victoria was. How tall are you? And was there a particular problem in showing her diminutive nature during the whole show?
No, I was actually quite surprised by it myself when I saw it back. We had certain photographs on set with me and Tom and me and Rufus, where it plays very well on the height front. I think I've asked for some heels for when I work with Albert.
I'm 8'10".
And in terms of the costumes, my favourite actually is the Windsor uniform, the blue riding garb that you saw salute at the end, I think. But really, it was just, there's a real growth again. We started off in dresses that we felt she would have been dressed in by other people that were very girly and young. And I remember on set, I found it hard in certain scenes where she had to command or deal with the Privy Council, for example, and the men in certain ways, because I felt like a little girl, and actually I realise now it's a great thing. And as we go through the series, we start to see her business wear, her formal wear. When Albert comes in, we go into a more romantic era with gardenias in the hair. And so I think it's been an amazing opportunity for Nick and Roz, our hair and costume designers, to tell a real story there.
Next question. Thank you.
Jenna, again. A suggestion from was that he needed to persuade you to do the role in some way. Did you have difficulties in imagining yourself in the role? Or?
I think when taking on something very iconic and someone who really existed, there's definitely, I think you want to be sure that you can do it to the best of your ability. I think you've absolutely got to consider those things, but ultimately, like I say, the more I read, the more it unfolded in front of me, and it was impossible to turn down, absolutely. I mean, I think I would be crazy. It's a gift. It's an absolute gift to be able to explore and try to bring this to life. But funnily, I think when I left Doctor Who, the first thing I said was, I just don't want to do a series for a while. And then Daisy and Damien took me out for lunch. and so it changed, but it's been such a adventure. I've loved it.
Splendid. Next question, please. There's one over here. Just here, I think.
Hi, it's a question for Rufus. Was there one scene or any other which proved especially challenging for you? And how did you get on with the dancing? We saw you performing so well in the first episode.
Thank you. The dancing was one thing, but as Jennifer will tell you, one of the biggest challenges was the horses. I mean, Jenna, I'm sure she'll tell you about her horse had questions about the billing, I think. My horse, I don't know, my horse seemed to think that Melbourne was a bit of a book. And would vocalise. It seems, I don't know, it was never quite clear which end of the course the complaints were coming from. But midway through my dialogue, you'd be aware of it. It was the sound of an animal complaining about how boring it's riding.
I think he was mimicking you.
He was. It's like I'm doing the speech and you hear all of it. And, I managed to keep straight face. The same thing, Sarah said from the Queen's. But that was the biggest challenge.
The Queen was corpsing next to you. What was your horse called? Mine was called Almanzo.
Oh.
And he was the Queen.
Mine was pretty, yes, there's a quick competition going on. My horse was called Rupert, and it's very, very strange Rufus being on Rupert. But it is Rupert and Almanzo. Characters.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry, this is a question for Jenna as well. I just wondered, it's a bit of a silly one, if you were Queen for the day and you could introduce a law, what would it be and why?
This is the second time I've asked this today. I need to come up with a better answer. I said I'd give everyone the day off work, mainly just because I feel it would make me popular.
I like it.
Yeah, it's a good one. Maybe introduce a 3-day week.
We could do with a new bank holiday. We haven't had one for a long time.
Yeah.
3-day week.
A new bank holiday.
Anyone, another question? I think there's one here. The mic coming around.
This is for Daisy and Damien, please. I just wondered where you chose to draw your line with historical accuracy. how far did you choose to dramatise or guess in between, and what would be your approach to the inevitable nitpicking from viewers on Twitter?
Well, they can pick away. I think that everything that happens upstairs, I mean, obviously the servant characters are mostly invented, but everything that happens upstairs is true and based on, you know, Victoria's diaries. I've obviously embroidered where, you know, things were not said. So her diaries, which I've used pretty much as a source, were heavily censored, weren't they, by Victoria's youngest daughter after she died. But I think you've only got to look at her diaries and to see, just in about 5 pages, how often she mentions Lord M. And, you know, Lord M liked my dress, Lord M says that the earrings are barbarous, Lord M says this, Lord M says that. They talk about flogging, they talk about, I mean, it's the record of the most astonishing crush ever. And between a queen and her prime minister. So I didn't have to invent very much. I just obviously put into words things that are unspoken. But and the whole Lady Flora Hastings story, where Victoria thinks that she's been made pregnant, her mother's lady-in-waiting has been made pregnant by Sir John Conroy, that's all true. So I haven't actually had to invent that much. And if there are any historical inaccuracies, then they're all my fault, and Twitter can, you know, rain it's ignominy on my head.
Jenna, it looks like you're wearing blue contact lenses in that. And if so, were they uncomfortable, and how difficult was it to get the right shade?
I mean, we must have gone, I think we were in the zone of about 70 pairs. We tried 70-ish pairs, something like that, and different camera tests. And again, it was Nick from Head of Makeup, Nick Collins, it was her idea. Which is great, because actually you look at like any of the portraits that you see that are here, the first thing you see is her eyes. It's her eyes that kind of pop out to you. So I think it's fantastic, and it's great to, you know, obviously to look so different. And in terms of comfort, they were fine, other than when we shot by candlelight. I mean, I was in a rose-tinted world, because everything just had like a haze, which wasn't unpleasant, really. Another one? Can I see the one from there? Just is it over here?
Hi, question from Daisy first of all. How did you want Mercedes to compare and contrast to Versailles?
Ooh!
And also a question for Tom and Rufus. Obviously, Pole Dark has been very popular as well. Was there a rivalry between you two? Who got the bare-chested side moment?
Well, shall I answer my bit first? Because I obviously can't talk about bare chests. I hadn't seen Versailles until after Victoria was finished. So all I can say is mine is, I would say, probably closer to the historical truth than Versailles.
And I was wandering around Versailles all the time. But no changes. All inside hand.
Tom?
Well, I mean, you know, I think Rufus has answered that. I can corroborate he did have a side with him not.
And some sort of Cornish hay. Splendid. Any more questions? Is there one from there? Yes, madam.
So I think this follows on a bit from historical accuracies, questions for Daisy.
Yeah.
Obviously, you had a great source with the diaries. When you come to write the script, did you actually lift any particular phrasing or things that you liked in particular from the diary?
Well, actually, some of the best lines, I'm afraid, I consider the best lines in the show are not mine, but actually mostly Lord Melbourne's. So when he says, you know, trouble with scandals, if the mud doesn't always stick to the right people, that he said that. And
true.
The truth is often overrated. Again, that's Melbourne talking. So I just plundered. I mean, Melbourne was one of the great wits, and you know, he was a fantastic character. And I'm afraid I took a lot of his dialogue straight from him. And with Victoria, I think it was more a question of emphasis. So if you look at Victoria's diaries, they're full of capital letters and underlinings, and you know, she talked. You can just see the woman she was. So what I've tried to do is to give her as much kind of spirit in the way that she talks as there was in the diaries. And one of the things she does is I don't know if you remember, but there's a point where she stops calling him Lord Melbourne and calls him Lord Anne, and that was her special pet name for him, and that was a big moment of intimacy, I think, between them, and that is definitely something that comes straight from the diaries.
Great. I've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, so any further questions, speak now or hold your peace. Where are they? The microphone's over there, I think. You said? Over there? It's the one at the back? Yeah, over there.
I just wanted to know, so it's going to be going out on a Sunday night. Do you think it has potential to be the next Downton Abbey or ITV?
Oh, God. I mean, Downton Abbey is the world's greatest series, so, I mean, I couldn't possibly comment. It's a very, very, very big shoes to fill, but I love Sunday night telly, so if people enjoy curling up and watching this as much as they did Downton, then I would feel my work was done.
Splendid. Any more from the back, perhaps, or should we come forward to the front? One minute.
Hi, this is a question for Jenna. Sort of harking back to when you were in Emmerdale, did you ever imagine that you'd be sort of playing the greatest monarch possibly that ever lived?
I didn't imagine the week before I got the script that I would ever be playing the greatest monarch that ever lived. No, I don't think it's until it lands on your desk and you find yourself in costume and looking at portraits of her and actually being in the room today where she was born, and it kind of hits you. I've never played anybody real before, so that has been a very interesting experience.
Super. Any one more from the back, and otherwise you come forward? I think there are a few at the front as well.
I'm assuming that the Queen did not allow you into Buckhouse or the throne room for a couple of days, so where were all those magnificent locations? Where was it all?
We had this amazing aircraft hangar in Yorkshire that our incredible set designer Michael Howes has transformed into Buckingham Palace. So the throne room and that incredible corridor with all the candles, that's all a set. Some of the other rooms we filmed in stately homes near the location in Yorkshire, so Harewood House and Castle Howard stands over Kensington Palace. So we did the stately homes of Yorkshire pretty comprehensively, didn't we?
It's worth saying perhaps the reason why the exterior of Buckingham Palace does not look like Buckingham Palace as it is today is because the front of Buckingham Palace was an addition. As it currently is in the early 20th century, I think.
George V decided to fill it all in. So the thing at the front, that's Marble Arch, which is now at Marble Arch, but that was originally in front of Buckingham Palace. That's for
look pretty good there, I think.
Buckingham Palace nerds.
Splendid.
I might be one.
I think one more here.
First slide shows us kind of the wild, rampant sex side of the French royal family. Will we see for the first time a little bit more of the English family in this?
Ooh, well, you'll just have to wait and see, won't you? All I can say is that Victoria and Albert had 9 children in 17 years, and one of the things that Albert did when he built Osborne House was to install a special bolt in their bedroom, so that if they wanted to get it on, all he had to do was to push a button by the bed and the door would be locked, so that no servants or children could interrupt them. I say no more than that.
Splendid. So I've got time for just a few more. Are there anyone from the back at all? Or yes, I think there's one of you from the back, is there? And then we'll move to the front.
Thank you. Congratulations, everyone. I really enjoyed that. Actually, my question is for Ruth and Cyril. You know, we're used to seeing you over the years play not so likeable characters and schemers. And, you said yourself it did make a nice change to actually like the person you were playing. So my question is twofold, really. You know, how did that feel to actually be approached to play a character like that? And second, what's it like to come back to British television in such an iconic role?
Well, thank you. Well, to say the truth, it's not that much of a change. I like to think I'm pigeonholed into different things. That's how I express my person. In America, I'm type across the back. And in England, I always thought, what's the English law? That I'm still narrow margin. But actually, because I got the script, just as I was preparing an American laugh series of yes, the lead character was so warm, so funny, so nice, and it just felt like there was a point of music I kind of said that I swear off wrong, because at the time it felt like I was awesome. But by the time this is, the fact that I was in that stage to play a part like was really a gift. So it's very nice to come always to, for me.
I think that's so. Thank you. That's super. So let's have a. I think we've got two very quick ones and two very fast ones.
Wonderful drama. I think we're going to watch it in the Netherlands. It has been pre-sold there already. What do you hope and think international audiences will make of it, and why would they want to watch the drama about Queen Victoria?
God knows. Well, because I think Victoria is probably the one royal that everyone's heard of, apart from Elizabeth, I guess. And I suppose, I think there's something, I hope, something interesting in a human story about a very young girl being catapulted into this incredibly important role that she's not really ready for. There were no royal spin doctors in 1837, and she has to kind of make it up as she goes along. And I hope that as the series progresses, you'll see it's not just the story of Victoria, it's also the story of the country. And I think it's about power, and I think right now it's very interesting to see how a woman copes with being in power, because we're now at a time when women are now in power because they've been elected, but in the 19th century they came into power through an accident of genealogy, which is what happened to Victoria. But I think that is quite an interesting parallel.
Right, we've got time for one super quick, whizzy question. Is that, I think, Daisy, this is been waiting patiently. Been waiting patiently. Thank you, sir.
For Jenna, just the crown, how nerve-wracking was it walking forward left the coronation scene? It looks massive.
Yeah, not nerve-wracking, more challenging, I'd say. But apparently on the day is something like the coronation went wrong a lot.
Yes.
Like the crown was too big for her head. The ring got put on the wrong finger. So it was a case of that. But we played music on the day of the coronation. But a lot of it is green screen as well. So it was it was a lot of reacting to.
It's meant to wobble. Because
it's meant to wobble. Yeah, that's on purpose. But that really happened.
Yes, it really did.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming and for all your wonderful questions. And thank you to the panel, to Jenna, to Tom, to Rufus all the way in the other side of the world, to Daisy and to Damien for their wonderful answers and fantastic concisions, as we don't have very much time. And so grateful to you all for coming. And we look forward to the series when it starts on ITV. So thank you so much.
Really good.
Wake up tomorrow morning and you find yourself the most powerful woman in the world. That would be quite scary. So I just had this notion of this, tempestuous teenager suddenly becoming queen, who really doesn't get on with her mother. And from then on, the scenes just sprang from the page, and I just thought, well, this is the Victoria that people don't know. They don't know about her relationship with Melbourne, they don't know about how she falls in love with Albert, they certainly don't know about the scandals that beset the beginning of her monarchy and how difficult it was for her to become queen. And finally, I'll just say the thing that I really love about Victoria is that she's the first queen to choose her own name. Nobody was called Victoria in the 19th century before Victoria. And she decides she's not going to be called Alexandrina, she's not going to be called Charlotte or Elizabeth or any of these kind of regal names. She's going to be called Victoria. And because Victoria is the name of a winner. And, that's how she made her mark on the 19th century.
Fascinating, yeah. So, well, a winner. And Jenna, you are absolutely wonderful in the role, luminous and fantastic. And what's it been like for you portraying such an incredible role?
It's been quite a revelation, actually. From beginning to end, I think she's quite surprising, and I'm surprised in how little I knew when I first started, and actually a lot of people who I speak to, and while we've been filming and saying I've taken on this part, and a lot of people instinctively would say, you can't play Victoria.
An old bag and a bonnet. And I suddenly saw this line of text that said, I've just seen my darling Albert in white cashmere breeches with nothing on underneath. And I just thought, oh yes, this is a girl of passion, this is a passionate teenager, and she just sort of leapt off the page at me. And I suppose I've had a bit of a thing for Victoria ever since. And quite recently I was writing a novel about Victoria, and I thought actually this would make the most wonderful screenplay. And so I met Damien and I said, Damien, what do you think? And I told him how I saw Victoria, because I have a 15-year-old daughter who's about the same size as Jenna, and we were having a row the other day, and I thought, what would it be like if you suddenly went...
Yes, as you get on, go for it.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. So I'm Kate Williams, writer and historian, written a book about the youth of Queen Victoria, and I'm thrilled to see you all here this evening at this marvellous occasion to celebrate Victoria, the wonderful drama that's going to be such a big hit, I'm sure. And I'm here to speak to the most brilliant people, and I have to speak to you this evening, Jenna Coleman, who is the star who plays Victoria, Tom Hughes, who plays Albert, and Rufus Sewell, who plays Lord Melbourne, Daisy Goodwin, the writer, and Damien Timmer, the executive producer. So please welcome them all to the stage. Oh, splendid. And our connector worked. That's just marvellous. Splendid. Hello, Rufus. Marvellous to see you. So I'm going... I'm so happy that worked. And I've got... what I'm going to do is ask a few questions of the panel and then throw it open to you so we can all have a conversation. So I'm going to start first. So I'm going to start with Daisy and say to Daisy... So Daisy, why did you decide to write a drama devoted to the early years of Victoria's reign?
Well, it all started when I was a student. I was about 19 and I was sitting in the university library, and I was looking through the diaries of Queen Victoria because I had to write an essay about media and the monarchy. And I was thinking, oh, Queen Victoria.